Hi guys, in this video we're going to be looking at a mock test from Ashfield Driving Test Centre, and as we start the mock test video there is an ancillary control fault almost straight away. Now this comes down to the pupil having to wash the front windscreen, however just fumbling a little with the controls, washing the rear windscreen first and getting a bit panicked about that one. It is what it is. I don't know if an examiner would mark that, but going on the harsher side of things, I am going to mark it. Coming up to the end of the driveway, make sure you keep the car nice and straight, get all the way to the giveaway line like this pupil has, and then you'll be able to see what's going on. And then as we leave, we're going to be turning right at the traffic lights. Now you can see the pupil line up here on the right hand side, which is absolutely spot on. Now just after we make this turn, we are going to be taking another right turn at the next set of traffic lights. So normally I'd tell a pupil to come around the corner into the left hand lane. However, on this occasion, we're going to go into the right hand lane ready for that next turn. And you'll see the pupil take up the position nice and early on, a little bit wide on the initial entry, but no issue in my opinion there, so no fault to be recorded. And then as we come up to the filter lane, mirrors and signal before we enter that filter, and you can see the pupil lining up on the right of the two lanes. Now ideally I'd say we should be on the left here, however as long as when we turn the pupil maintains that position and then moves back into the left after the turn, I'm absolutely fine with that, and an examiner would be too. Now you'll see when the pupil comes round, both of the lanes have arrows telling each side to merge in, so there's no priority over either side here, whereas normally the arrows will tell the right hand lane to move into the left, so the left technically has priority. Either way, effective mirror use, and make sure you're moving in good time, giving other people plenty of space. Notice the national speed limit sign there, and of course we can't pick up because of the van in front. However, if the road is clear, you should be picking up your pace. In terms of the van in front, just maintaining a good following distance is essential here. You want to be able to stop if the van does, and being further back, you'll be able to see around it more effectively too. So the pupil's doing a really good job of that. As we approach the next traffic light, we'll be turning left. So you can see the pupil taking up that first lane. We'd use this one for left or straight, mirrors and signal before you join the queue, and then of course keep your eyes moving while you're waiting in that queue. Just going to skip ahead because we were at these lights for quite a while. And as we go, again, just another mirror check just to see if there's any bikes coming up the middle of the lane. Sometimes you'll get motorbikes filtering through, and if you miss them in your checks, you may cause an issue when you move off. Taking the turn there straight into the left-hand lane, which is absolutely perfect. And then we've got a roundabout where we're going to be going straight ahead. Both the lanes allow you to do that, so keep an eye on the neighbouring lane. If anyone's trying to overtake you, they may have to merge as they leave the roundabout. So we want to be ready for that. Like this silver car here, you'll see those arrows straight afterwards. They have to merge in, so we need to know who's with us as we go across that roundabout. Straight ahead at the next roundabout, and that's first exit. And we shouldn't be signalling ideally. However, a left signal wouldn't do any harm in this situation. So I'm not going to fault the pupil for tapping a left signal as she come up to the roundabout there. And you can see she did a really good job of giving way to the van from the right, just allowing them to go, and then straight out as they cleared her path. So she's straight into that gap, and that's absolutely perfect. We shouldn't be sitting there hesitating, waiting for a bigger gap or anything. Just as soon as you've got a gap, get those wheels turning and off you go. Up ahead, I'm going to get my pupil to pull up on the left, and we want to pull up just by these overhanging trees and the wall after the driveway. This is the ideal place to be on this bit of road. This is a nice wide patch of road where cars can pass you nice and easily. You've got a good view of what's coming up behind you. Now on this one, I'm going to record a fault for signalling correctly because the pupil pulled up with her left signal on, which is absolutely fine. But then as she moved off, the left signal was still on. It didn't cause any issue. She did cancel it within a couple of seconds. So just a driver fault on this occasion, but be very careful because that could escalate into a serious fault if anyone is misled by that signal, or if you leave it on so long that the examiner intervenes and tells you to turn it off. So what I advise is when you pull over, put the signal off completely, put the car in park or handbrake neutral if you're in a manual, and then when you drive on, you're starting completely fresh. So you can't make the mistake of leaving the signal on, forgetting to select first gear if you're in a manual. Instead, you're completely starting again in a sense. And this also helps mentally because you're breaking the drive into several steps. So when you pull over, pop the car into park or handbrake neutral and reset before you move on again. Again, coming down this road, you can see the pupils keeping a really good following distance on the car ahead. We have plenty of time if anything changes up ahead. And this is absolutely ideal. It gives us a good view of the road ahead, and it means when that car in front slows down, we have plenty of time to just smoothly bring the car in behind them. Up ahead, I've told my pupil to help with their planning. We're going to be taking the right turn at the third set of traffic lights, and that is signposted Chesterfield. So when an examiner tells you to help with your planning, you'll be turning right up ahead. That should be your cue to move over to the right-hand lane. Now the pupil has stayed on the left-hand lane. We've passed the first set of traffic lights. We're coming up to the second, and she's recognized that she needs to move over. Now we don't want to do that as we join the back of the queue because that could leave us across the lanes. So she's done the right thing here by sticking her position, and then as she moves off, getting on those mirrors, getting that signal on, and looking for an opportunity to move out. So absolutely fantastic example there of changing lanes. Nice and smoothly done again, as you can see. And then there's our filter lane to the right turn for Chesterfield. Notice the pupil's taken up the far right hand lane. Now again, I would ideally say you should be on the left hand lane of these two lanes that are turning, but as long as you make your way around the corner safely, maintaining your position, and then after the turn, get on those mirrors, get that left signal on, and bring the car in nice and safely. As long as you do that, then there's absolutely no problem in using that second lane to make the turn. And the pupil does a fantastic job of that. Whilst we're traveling along roads like this, you should be frequently checking the right-hand side for overtaking traffic. If something changes ahead that requires you to change lane, then knowing what's on your right-hand side is going to be really helpful. There could be roadworks, there could be a broken down vehicle, or there could just be a merging up ahead where the two lanes become one. So checking those mirrors frequently is going to keep you more capable of keeping yourself safe, and awareness of your surroundings is absolutely essential if you want to pass your test. You've got to keep your eyes moving. You've got to keep aware of who's around you at all times. Up ahead at the traffic lights, we're going to be taking a left turn. Now, just before the traffic light, there is a driveway for the pub. My advice would be wait till you get past that driveway before you put your signal on, because otherwise the examiner is going to expect you to buy him a pint, and I wouldn't blame them for that. You can see the pupil here keeping a good space there for the pedestrian to cross. Just keeping back from her makes her more visible to the traffic in lane 2 as well. So don't get too close to people if you can see that they are waiting to cross. Now remember, we are taking a left at these traffic lights. We're then taking another left turn straight after, and you'll notice the sign on the left hand side as we turn tells us left hand lane for left, right hand lane for straights. Just be mindful of this road layout if you come down this way. As we make this turn, I've told my pupil to turn into the pub car park because it's her turn to buy the round. I want to assess her parking, and if you're going into a car park, the examiners may ask you to drive forwards into any parking space or to reverse park. Listen very, very carefully to what they say, and of course, do your best to carry out the maneuver and finish with all four wheels inside the line. You'll see the pupil here swinging out, ready to reverse into the bays on the left. This is the method that I use to teach my pupils to bay park. We pull up next to the space, swing away from it, and then reverse in. If you need to adjust the maneuver, that is absolutely fine as well. There's no issue if you come back into the bay, realize it's not in the lines, and then have to shuffle it forward and back again. You'll pick up a driver fault if you correct your maneuver, but at least you'll be on track for a pass. Whereas if you leave the car in a bad position with the wheels over the lines, then you're going to get a serious fault. So don't be shy to check those lines and correct it. You can see the pupil has overshot the bay a little bit, so she's trying to wiggle it in by allowing the car to continue turning and then flipping the wheel the other way so the front is in line. She did get the back wheels in by doing this, and then of course aligning the front is really, really simple then. So as a result, she doesn't need to pull out and correct the maneuver, and she doesn't pick up any faults for doing this. Making our way out of the car park, I'm going to ask the pupil to take a left turn onto the road. Now, there is a curb on the left hand side which you need to keep yourself away from. If you steer into that curb and go over it, you will pick up a fault. It can be quite a busy road too, so the pupil does have to wait for a short while. The view from cars coming from the right hand side where we came from off the traffic light junction is really poor because they come around the bend quite quickly as well. We don't have a lot of time to react to them, so the pupil has to sit tight for a few cars to pass and then she can pull out. As she turns, the back wheel does go over the curb. You'll see the car wobble a little bit as it comes off the other side, so that is going to pick her up a driver fault. Now, at this point, the pupil explained afterwards that she thought she had failed for that. So going over a curb isn't necessarily a serious fault and a fail. It may only pick you up a driver fault. Now, what can happen if you start overthinking that is you'll distract yourself, and further along, you're going to create another problem which ends up being a serious fault. So don't overthink any mistakes you've made. Leave them behind and move on. If it is serious, the examiner will tell you at the end, and there's not a lot you can do to change it, is there? So don't dwell on it and distract yourself from what you're doing next. As we're coming down past these parked cars, what I'd like to see is plenty of mirror checks. Your right mirror as you're approaching, so you know what's coming up behind you and how much room you've got before you move out. Your left mirror as you're passing by. I've asked the pupil to take the next road on the right. This one's a little bit of an awkward angle, so you can see the pupil leaning left before she turns to the right. If there's cars coming from your left, you must give way to them, so you want to keep back from that center line and not hang over it. If there's cars coming, you are going to get a serious fault, and I have had a pupil fail for exactly that. Up ahead, I'm going to get my pupil to pull up behind the blue car on the left. This is an angle start, and every test will have one of these in. The examiners will ask you to pull up behind a parked vehicle, allowing enough room to get out again, about a car length. Then they'll ask you to drive on again, and what they want to see is that you're very aware of the oncoming cars when you move around that parked car, as well as checking your blind spots and watching out for the cars behind. The pupil does a really nice job of this one. She pauses for the oncoming car because she's not sure about the space that she's got, and she's very aware of what's behind her too, because as that car passes, the van behind does not slow down, doesn't give her a chance to continue. So I'm not going to fault her for the decision she made there to hold back and let the van carry on, because the speed he was carrying, he showed no indication that he was going to let her carry on out of that space. This is why your awareness on your test is so important. The pupil could have carried on there, and that would have resulted in a dangerous fault because the van would have had to react or I'd have had to stop her. So spotting that van and spotting the behavior of the van as it approached, she was aware of the risk that it created and made a sensible decision to wait for it to pass first. Absolutely perfect example of awareness and how it can keep you safe. At the end of this road, the pupil is going to be taking a left turn. Now, the right-hand side looks like you might be able to see on the approach of this, but with the garage there, the fuel garage, there's often a lot of vehicles and a lot of obstructions to your view there, so it's always best to approach this junction quite slowly. If you've got a car in front, of course, you haven't got a choice, but if that junction's clear, make sure you're slowing down and checking that right-hand side properly. The left side also, there's often parked vehicles nearby, so you don't just want to come flying out and then have to go around a parked car. You want to take your time and make effective observations on both sides before you pull out. It's important to keep in mind with junctions like this in particular that for the past however many years, the most common reason for failing your driving test has consistently been making effective observations at junctions. And when people come up to junctions like this and roll themselves out too quickly, that is exactly what it's referring to. It's making sure you check both sides are clear before you enter that new road. Make sure you're not rushing yourself through and don't take any chances. Keep it slow, keep it safe, and keep it predictable for the examiner, as well as for everybody around you. Keep it predictable. If you do things that are not expected, like pulling out in front of people without looking properly, you are going to start flagging up faults on your test. Notice the warning sign on the left there for traffic lights, and then another one telling you there's a crossroad. Wherever you see warning signs, the examiners will expect you to show an awareness of hazards coming up. So checking your mirrors, just easing off the speed a little bit. That's absolutely what they want to see. What they don't want to see is you carrying on at 30 miles an hour with absolutely no show of awareness as to what those warnings are telling you. Any warning sign means watch out for what's going on ahead. So just come off the power, cover your mirrors, and be mindful of what those signs are trying to tell you. Bearing left here, just keep in mind that with the angle of this curve, the signal on my car does not cancel when you straighten the wheel, so you have to cancel it yourself. Now, that may not be the case in the car you're learning in, but if your signal does stay on, make sure you cancel it. This road's also quite narrow as you come down it, so you want to be mindful of oncoming traffic. It can be quite difficult to see what's going on down this road, so take your time, cover those mirrors frequently, and don't rush for any gaps. At the traffic light, we're going to take a left turn. Now, as we take that left turn, you'll notice the van stops to give way to the learner here, and that is absolutely how you should be treating traffic lights when you're turning left or right, or even going straight ahead. The cars that are turning right give way to the oncoming cars because they're crossing the path of those oncoming cars, whereas the ones going left and straight, You're not crossing anyone's path, so you get priority. Keep that in mind when you're going up to lights, and don't hesitate if the priority is yours, because this can cause issues for vehicles behind you and cause confusion for other drivers. And of course, that is going to flag up as a fault on your driving test. So if you have priority, make sure you're approaching with the confidence to take that priority. You can see here the pupil's travelling at a lowered speed along this road. She's only hitting about 25 mile an hour at the most, and that's because of the amount of warnings on here saying to slow down, the amount of parked cars on both sides of the roads, the zebra crossing, the school zone. There's so much going on in that section of road that you cannot really get up to speed and remain safe. So keep in mind that the busier the situation is, the busier the road is, the more risks there are that could affect your driving. So the slower you want to go, the more cautious you want to be. And to pair with that, it's not just the lowered speed, it's effective mirror use. And the pupil was really, really good at that, covering her mirrors frequently as we went down that road. Just here, the parked cars on the left do prevent you from going through if there's oncoming traffic. So keep that in mind if you come down this way. And then we've got a set of traffic lights coming up where we'll be turning left. There is a junction on the left just before that, so be careful of your signal timings. Don't put your signal on before you pass that junction, and make sure you're in the correct lane, of course, for this one. If you're going straight or left-hand lane. It is a little bit tight by this van, but I think my pupil handled that really well. She showed fantastic awareness of how close she was to the van, and she was very, very aware of the cars on the right as she did this, using her mirrors quite consistently as she went through that junction. So I'm really, really pleased with the way she did that. And again, that awareness is going to reduce the chance of you picking up faults because you're showing the examiner you know what's going on. At these lights, we're going straight ahead. Notice the arrows on the road there. Usually you'd be in the left-hand lane, but of course the road here is telling us differently. Make sure you're paying attention to those markings, because if you get in the wrong lane and then try to continue straight from a lane that's marked left only, you will get a serious fault on your test. If you find yourself in that left-hand lane and you can't change safely and in good time of the junction, just go left. It's far better to go the wrong way safely than it is to try to go the right way dangerously. Just a little further up, I'm going to ask my pupil to pull over on the left again. Now, you'll get asked to do this several times on your driving test. If you do this several times in a row, it can start to worry you that the examiner's looking for something in particular in the way you're doing things, or you're doing something wrong. However, they are going to ask you 4 or 5 times anyway. They may just do it quite close together. So try and avoid overthinking why the examiner's doing that. Now, this part here, notice the blue pickup coming out from the left-hand side. Remember the fault where my pupil left her left signal on and pulled out? Because she created a risk with that vehicle being so close, I'm going to record that as a serious fault on this occasion. She left that left signal on, and that Jeep may have saw the left signal, assumed she wasn't moving or was pulling over, or even was pulling into that pub car park, and pulled out on her. And that could have then been a dangerous fault. So it's got to go as a serious fault because of that vehicle being there. Up ahead, we're going to be taking a right turn at the traffic lights. So there is a filter lane, there is a filter light. I want to see mirrors and signal done before you enter that filter lane. And then, of course, when you get that filter light coming on, it gives you a clear path across the junction. When you've got the green arrow, the oncoming cars will be stopped. So going across with confidence is another thing that I want to see when dealing with a junction like this. And the pupil does really nicely coming around there, absolutely spot on. Up ahead, I'm going to ask my pupil to pull up on the left again. It's, I think, the fourth time we've done it on this test, mock test. So again, the examiners are going to ask you 4 or 5 times potentially to do this. They just want to see that you can pick a safe place to pull over, that when you move on, you're checking your blind spots and you're using the correct signals if you signal. Now, again, the pupil is going to leave her left signal on before moving off. That can be misleading, and like you seen with the blue pickup earlier, if there's anyone around, it can be recorded as a serious fault. It can even be recorded as a dangerous fault if it causes them to have to react. So when you pull over, pop yourself into park or handbrake neutral if you're in a manual, and then of course cancel your signal and start from fresh when you move away again. At the end of this road, we'll be turning left, and then we'll be straight back to the test centre to wrap up this mock test. Now, the pupil doesn't make any more mistakes from here, which is absolutely gutting in a sense, because that one mistake by leaving the signal on, it's something really trivial in itself. However, as you can see, it can escalate into a serious fault, or it could even become a habitual fault if you keep doing it as well. So you want to be really careful of the little details like that. Make sure your signals are correct, make sure they're timed well, make sure your mirrors are covered regularly. All the little details add up, and it all comes down to being aware of what you're telling people and what other people are doing around you. Constantly looking around, constantly being engaged with what you're doing. Don't switch off and don't overlook the details. As we come up to the traffic lights, the pupil takes the left-hand lane. We're then going to cross the lights and back into the test centre. So whilst it was a really good drive in itself, just that one mistake makes it a fail on this mock test, which is a real shame for this pupil. However, she did go on to pass her test 2 days later with just 4 faults, and that is absolutely fantastic for us. So that pretty much brings this video to an end. I thank you ever so much for watching this. I really do hope it's been useful for you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will keep these videos coming. Thank you again, and God bless.